Well, it's Transformers month, and my first video is going to be a throwback to the old days of Scramble-City combiners. Looking at one of my personal favorites, the Seacons. That's right, folks, we're going to tackle all 6 of these buggers, and it's going to be fun. So let's get started. What better place to start than the team's leader, Snaptrap, who's a large robotic snapping turtle, and is totally not a Blastoise. Which is funny since Snaptrap actually predates Blastoise by about 9 years. Regardless, he's a giant turtle with huge cannons on his back. Very mean looking gnaw. Some very nice, well, techno stuff all around. Regardless, he's a turtle. He looks cool. Articulation is about as limited. You can rotate his legs a bit. That's about it. You can open and close his mouth. And then an interesting gimmick, turning this post actually causes the cannons to pulsate, which is kind of cool. And all Snaptrap's, well, turtle mode is actually kind of cool. Pretty cool. And here's Snaptrap in robot mode. He's white, fuchsia, and pink. It's kind of eye-searing, but hey, it was the 80s. His robot mode is actually fairly nice, though it's a bit lanky. You can see I can actually mark the entire rear half of the turtle as a large shield, which later becomes the chest piece, as well as wield really a gigantic gun. But you can also wield his nice chromed-out sword. So, Snaptrap's robot mode isn't too bad. Though unfortunately, he's the only member of the Seacons who does not possess a third mode, as all the others can also become target masters. Speaking of, and first off, it's Nautilator, who is actually the Dr. Zoidberg of the group. I wish that was kind of true, but it actually is. He's, of course, a teal lobster. And as you can see here, he actually is a teal lobster, which is a bit weird. He doesn't really do a whole lot. I mean, he does properly look like a robotic lobster, but I don't know how much disguise that would be. He does his job. No real articulation other than in the arms here, which actually are very easy to lose. You can rotate them, that's about it. He does have a mouth that you can... That's actually not articulation, technically. He does have a mouth you can open like that. So you can have his barely visible mouth open and a giant hole in it. And yeah, that's really all Nautilator does in lobster mode. That wasn't horrifying enough, and now I'll give you Nautilator in robot mode. Yes, he's one of those that has a joined together feet that you can't pull apart for the life of you. And he looks horrible. He's also needlessly chunky, as you can just see by looking like that. And he essentially has a huge lobster hanging off his back. So he really is a loser in every sense of the imagination. And thanks to the included weapon stand, we can also look at Nautilator's Target Master mode, where he becomes some kind of torpedo gun thing. It's just a lobster with his tail flipped and the gun plugged into the back of it. Now, most of these modes are fairly uninspired, but this is probably the worst. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't want to wield that. Next up, we have Scalor, who is a very interestingly colored coelacanth. You know, one of those ancient fish that everyone thought was extinct until they caught one off the coast of South Africa in 1980. And if any fish really deserve to have arms, it actually is the coelacanth. Now, its coloration is very, well, interesting, but in all the designs on his fish mode are actually pretty cool. Of course, he has little tiny stubby legs that are more human than they really should be, but hey. Little tiny forward hands that he can maneuver, obviously. Little tiny mouth that's very fangful that you can open and close. Obviously, you can move the legs a bit. And you can even move his little fin. So yeah, he's a nasty looking predator fish. And here we have Scalor's rather tiny robot mode. That's right, folks, he's dual wielding and... well, yeah, he looks kind of funny. One notable thing is he actually does have elbow articulation because his hands are essentially his feet, which is interesting. Although his normal feet are just like Nautilator's, they're just one piece that are supposed to be, you know, two. But and other than a tiny head, Scalor's robot mode is, you know, alright. Not super great or anything. And of course, Scalor's Target Master mode. It's a fish with guns on its chin. Gotta admit, this looks far more like a weapon than Nautilator's did. And up next is the aptly named Tentakill, who's supposed to be a squid. A squid with very human-like legs, apparently. Now, this one really has very little articulation. Now, you can move these two side, well, groups of tentacles forward. You can move his legs around a bit, obviously, which is great. And you can move these rear two legs around a little bit, though, again, it's not a huge much. So he's a squid. He kind of does look like a squid, even though he looks really, really pissed off. Actually, that kind of works, I guess. Tentakill's robot mode. It's actually kind of cool. I kind of love how the suckers there just kind of swoop back. He still has a tiny head, but in all the colors kind of work. He's very blocky, but his legs Once again, they're just one piece and they're supposed to be two, but I don't know, maybe it's because of that green bit. They kind of work. Plus, I love the fact that he's dual wheeling, which is kind of cool. Target Master mode kind of reminds me of an Eldritch Abomination, like something out of the Lovecraft mythos. Next up, we have Seawing, who's a very nice looking manta ray, and one, of course, with legs, because otherwise it'd be kind of hard for him to stand. Now, I gotta say, Seawing's probably one of my favorites in their animal modes, just because he looks all kinds of badass. He has two Decepticon logos on either side, and he has a nice long tooth-filled mouth, and I don't know why, but I just like Seawing's beast mode the best. Seawing's robot mode is no slouch either, mainly because he actually has two actual feet, as well as double wielding, which is cool. And it's nice to see that it was that manta kind of cape thrown there on the back. Although he does have some trouble balancing. Seawing's Target Master mode is no slouch either. It actually looks like a gun I'd like to use. I'd like to know how that would work with the sights. Still though, pretty cool. And the last of the Limbots, it's Overbite, or as he's known as in the UK, Jawbreaker. He is a shark with limbs. Suck it, Skybite. So yeah, he's a very interestingly colored shark with arms and legs, which is a concept I just get all kinds of enjoyment out of for some reason. I mean, he's a shark with limbs, for God's sakes. Oh. Even though I really like Seawing, this is just my favorite overall in principle. It's a shark with limbs. A shark with fuchsia limbs and teal body, apparently. His robot mode leaves something to be desired, however. Especially since his feet are literally a giant shark's head. Ugh. He does have elbows, though, like Scalor, which is good. And he comes with a decent-looking weapon. And once again, other than his tiny head, which is kind of, connection thing with all these. You know what? Overbite isn't too bad if you didn't have bad mold degradation. Yeah. Good luck trying to get that gun to fit in his shark mode, or for these arms to stay on, because they like to fall out. Well, but that's not all. And Overbite's Target Master mode. What can I say? It's a shark gun. It's not the most beautiful Target Master I've ever seen, but it's not the ugliest either. Now it's time to put them all together. Well, first off, you just really need to take your good old buddy Snaptrap here, bow his legs out like this. This is assuming you're going from robot mode. Flip his arms in and around like so. It's pretty easy so far. Take his shield, flip both prongs out, and just line it up and clip it on there. It'll form the chest section. And now just take the big Piranacon head and slide it on. And now we're, well, 1/5 the way done. From here, just attach your various limbs and arms, and voila! And thus we have formed Piranacon. Now, since Piranacon is a Scramble-City combiner, you can actually swap the Limbots around as you wish. But in this particular mode, I have Overbite and Tentakill as arms, and as you can see, Seawing and Nautilator as feet. Now, I find Seawing and Nautilator tend to make the most stable 2 feet, though obviously you can make them arms if you wish. Those two just happen to be the ones that are best suited for standing upright. Now, articulation-wise, Piranacon is pretty well a brick. Mind you, that's true for most G1 combiners. You can rotate his hands as well as his shoulders, but ultimately, that's all the posability you're going to get out of him. Which is a little unfortunate, but again, is par for the course, like I said, for G1 combiners. Now, when it comes to weaponry, you can actually outfit this bad boy with Snaptrap's sword, which once again actually looks pretty awesome. Or, if you so wish, you can actually use Snaptrap's large gun and just clip it in there, like so. Voila, sword and gun. Sweet. Since the Piranacons are a 6-member team rather than a 5-member team, you can actually have them wield the odd member out as a gun. In this case, Scalor as the, well, Thunder Gun, which actually looks all kinds of awesome. Of course, some configurations will hold the Target Masters better than others. This is one of the better ones, but you might get some problems with good old Piranacon falling forward with some of the less stable combinations. But of course, you could always place your odd man out on the tripod and use them as a mounted weapon, which is usually what I do. And of course, notice, now we have Seawing and Nautilator as arms, and Tentakill and Scalor as legs. My god, it's mad science. So in conclusion, Seacon, the Piranacons are actually a pretty nifty little combiner. They're unique in that they're 6 parts, as well as the fact that all the Limbots can actually turn into Target Master mode, which is great. All combined together, he does have some balance issues with some combinations, but in the end, if you can prop him up against something or just give him a little stand, he'll be fine. As well as if he's, it doesn't really matter if he's wielding his weapons in his hands or on his tripod. He's gonna look awesome. Thanks for tuning in, folks. And tune in tomorrow for Sound Out's review of some Transformers Legends. See ya.